when you look at the list of league MVPs over history. I say this with respect to Jokic. Historically speaking, he would be the worst one we've had in 35 years.
Joker, as the president of the Big Man Alliance, you are the vice president of the Big Man Alliance. You know I love you, the best player in the league. I want to congratulate you, but I want you to hear from me first. I thought the SGA should have been the MVP. That's no disrespect to you, but congratulations.
Nikola Jokic might be having the greatest individual season in NBA history, putting up a ridiculous 32 points a game, 14 rebounds, and 10 assists on 56% shooting and 50% from three-point range. His impact is unlike any we have ever seen before. With Jokic, the Nuggets have one of the best offenses in NBA history. Without him, they have one of the worst, giving him one of the highest plus-minus in the NBA at 173 and plus 31 per 100 possessions, which is the highest of all time. Although the Nuggets would be one of the worst teams ever if it weren't for Jokic, and he has no other All-Stars on his team, he may not win MVP due to his team's record, but he's still making the NBA media look incredibly foolish. When he was the favorite to win his first MVP, Nick Wright said even though Jokic was more deserving, the MVP should go to Chris Paul because Jokic would be the worst player ever to win an MVP.
That's every MVP in the last 40 plus years. Does Chris Paul fit right in probably the lower half but the middle-ish of those names? The answer is yes. I say this with respect to Jokic. Historically speaking, he would be the worst one we've had in 35 years.
And if that wasn't bad enough, he even went as far to say that having Nikola Jokic win an MVP would be a bad look for the NBA. Here was my response 3 years ago. Chris Paul is 30-something years old and Nikola Jokic is 26. You're comparing a 26-year-old who has his whole career ahead of him to guys that are already NBA legends or guys that are going to be NBA legends or at least in the Hall of Fame. So taking an argument as simple as, well, look at those names on that list, doesn't Chris Paul's just fit better, is such a terrible argument. The argument is so terrible that you can make the same argument for Dirk Nowitzki when he won his first MVP. Nick Wright's take was so awful, he made me look like a genius, but I was just using common sense. Last season, Shaq was angry that Jokic won MVP and told him to his face that Shai Gilgeous Alexander should have won it. In typical Shaq fashion, he made a comparison to himself and said that Shai Gilgeous Alexander was robbed just like he was when Steve Nash won MVP.
You know, Shaq said he got robbed.
Not every year it doesn't.
Well, most of the time. It goes to the guy. Yeah. So, you know, Shaq said he got robbed. I don't know if he got robbed.
I got robbed because I was the baddest mofo in the league.
But
let's talk about now.
It doesn't go to the best player. It goes to the guy who had the best regular season.
Well, you know what? Don't name him most valuable player then.
I don't know how Shaq can say that Jokic winning MVP was a robbery when both the Thunder and the Nuggets had the exact same record, and Jokic and Shai both put up good numbers. It's just that Jokic's were better all around. Either way, that's not a robbery. In the season before that, Kendrick Perkins was upset Jokic was the favorite to win MVP over Joel Embiid, so he made up excuses like Jokic was padding his stats.
Let me tell you one thing. It goes on, conversations goes on in that locker room, and players know what their stats are.
Are you sitting here and saying Nikola Jokic is having his numbers padded? Is that what you're saying?
You heard what the hell I said.
And the MVP voters were racist.
When it comes to MVP voting, 80% of the voters are white American. 20% are others.
That lie by Kendrick Perkins was so blatant that ESPN had to issue a correction.
When Kendrick Perkins said 80% of NBA voters for the MVP award are white. After review, it is clear the panel is much more diverse than what was portrayed by Kendrick Perkins, and we wanted to make sure that we corrected that today.
With Jokic already being a 3-time MVP, him having his best season ever, even topping those 3 seasons, puts any narrative of him being undeserving to rest. Even if Nikola Jokic doesn't win an MVP this season, he would at least be solidifying his first 3, and he's proven to be one of the greatest players of all time. And speaking of one of the greatest players of all time, I think the Denver Nuggets should start Russell Westbrook. Some of you might think I'm crazy, but check out that video here.